The very heart of them is the fact that stress and depression are created within the mind of people via their thoughts. That stress and depression are essentially thought disorders, even for your high-functioning person. To the extent that they have stress, to the extent that they have depression, their thoughts are working against them. And the way it works is that human beings are thinking creatures. Every thought that they have carries a feeling with it. And the feeling is what we call depression. The feeling of being down, being disheartened, is what we call depression. And echoing that is thoughts. But for those thoughts, there would be no depression. During the day, when that person's thoughts, when they're not thinking the thoughts that cause the depression, they're not depressed. Their spirits will go up. The same thing with stress. If you see stress as tension, that tension is created within the mind of the person. In a way, it's like a person going into a canyon and by themselves, they want to get away from people, and they start talking, and they hear voices, and they get frightened by the voices. And it's just the echo that they're hearing. So they yell at they think is a person out there making those noises, talking to them. They say, "What are you doing here? Leave me alone." And the more they yell, the louder the voices come back. So they think, wow, there's a battle going on here. Okay, now that's a silly example, but that's literally what happens to people if they don't understand the role of thought. That their feeling that they have is like an echo of their thoughts. It's a complete echo. The feelings and the thoughts are bound together. Okay? They're feeling the echo of those thoughts, and they're attributing the feelings to external circumstances. Their life, their fears, their mate, their job. If they're feeling pressure, they attribute it to their boss or to their finances, whatever it is. So they think that the cause of the depression and the stress is out there, the same way that the person that's in the canyon thinks that the sounds they hear are coming from people in the canyon. It's inconceivable to them, if they didn't understand echoes, that they're hearing their own voices like a boomerang. And it's inconceivable to people who don't understand the role of thought in life that they could actually be causing themselves the depressing feelings and the stressful feelings. It's inconceivable to them. And it looks to all of us, it can easily look like, but for those circumstances, I'd be doing good. You see? Whereas the truth is, but for that thinking, I'd be doing good. I'd be feeling good. And if you've ever noticed, it's virtually impossible to get the circumstances right. The world does not cooperate. Your mate is not going to be the way you think they have to be for you to feel good. Your boss is not going to be the way you think he has to be. It's not realistic. And even if you got it right, if your thinking was such, you'd still be depressed. If your thinking was such, you'd still be stressed. Because the only thing that matters is your thinking and the feelings that come out of it. That's what mental health and mental illness is all about. That's what mental well-being is all about. It's just happening inside the mind of the person. Okay? When people start to understand that link, they don't feed it. They don't indulge it. Their thinking naturally quiets down, and they find themselves having peace of mind. They find their mind free from, concerns and unpleasant thoughts, and when they have them, they just come through uneventfully. It doesn't frighten them, and they live in what some people call the present moment. They live in real time. Okay? And in real time, there isn't stress and there isn't depression. All there is passing thoughts. So if people caught on to the nature of thought, if they caught on to the role of thought and the relationship between thought and feeling, and if they saw that we live in an inside-out world where instead of our feelings coming from events and circumstances, we're actually generating them, they would have a learning curve, and they would have a new thinking, and they would have realizations that undercut the stressful and the depressing thoughts. And even if they had the same exact thoughts of stress and depression, it wouldn't affect them as much because they would see them as just thoughts, and they wouldn't tend to feed them, and they wouldn't tend to believe in them. It wouldn't seem real to them. And it's the reality of it that gives it its bite. That's what causes stress and depression, is if you have, thoughts of worry, thoughts of concern, and you believe that they're based on reality and that the world isn't right for you, that's when depression and stress take hold. If you see it as just, wow, I'm just having these thoughts right now, they don't have a life of their own. When I get over having these thoughts, I'll feel differently. Stress and depression are only acute. They don't become chronic. And it's the chronic that creates healthcare costs. The acute, we're all familiar with it. You get in a low mood, and the world looks really lousy to you, and then your mood changes, and the person who looked like, who looked like a bad person now looks like a character, and the house that looks like it's run down, all of a sudden looks like it has a lot of character to it. So we all know we're all in that boat of going in and out of low feelings and feeling pressure. It's when it becomes chronic, when it becomes a psychological way of life, that you have to treat it and you have to get medication for it, that's when it becomes a problem, and that's when it becomes a healthcare problem. And I'm saying that if you educated people about this, about the nature of thought and the role that thought plays in people's lives, you would significantly reduce the psychological-based illnesses, and you would also reduce every illness that is mediated by stress. Every illness that is exacerbated by stress would be reduced if people's level of well-being went up. And I'm saying that's very realistic. We have the understanding now, and the understanding has been put to use, and it's had that effect of significantly reducing stress and depression. So I'm doing this DVD in order to suggest these possibilities and suggest that something significant can be done to reduce healthcare costs without taking the money out of somebody's pocket.